Welcome to Permission to Shine, the space where high-achieving women like you come to peel back the layers, overcome what's been holding you back, and rise into your most authentic, powerful self. I'm your host, Sherisse Bisram, inner power activation leader and intuitive healer, and a woman who knows what it means to look like she's thriving on the outside, also while feeling disconnected on the inside. This podcast is here to remind you, you didn't come here to just perform, you came here to lead with your soul. Your obstacles, they're invitations to expand. And your power, it was never outside of you. It's been waiting within you all along. Each week we'll dive into honest conversations, healing insight and soul-led strategies to help you stop self-sabotaging, reclaim your light and lead your life, your business and your relationships from deep-rooted truth. So if you're ready to rise with grace, softness and fire, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I have another fabulous guest with me today, and I think I just put a story out and I was like, oh, who wants to join me on the podcast? And Jeni put her hand up and was up for coming on, and it's been really lovely just kind of seeing the connections. And I think this is the beautiful thing about feminine leadership, feminine business, is the connections and collaborations that you meet people with. And like me and Jeni haven't actually really got to know each other very well at all, and I wanted to get to know her as you get to know her, which is a lovely fun thing to do, but more so I think that it just highlights how like Jeni saw me through her, a mentor, and like the connections and all of the things. And I think that this is the way I really want to see feminine leadership continue to grow and blossom, through collaborations and connections. I think that's the beautiful thing. And then Jeni was also telling me that she is a somatic practitioner, which is obviously part of my bag too, which I can't wait to hear all about. So yeah, welcome to the podcast, Jeni.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad to have you. And I'd love to know, what is your like full title and all of the things?
So I'm a somatic practitioner. I basically help women rebuild who they are after toxic relationships.
Lovely. Well, I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about toxic relationships. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
But I would love to know kind of your story on how you got here. So maybe about, if you've had toxic relationships yourself in the past. I mean, obviously for me, a lot of my work stems from childhood experiences. So if it's relevant, please do share. If it's not, obviously skip to the good bit, but I want to hear it all.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's been such a journey. So relationships were always my thing. Like they were the thing that I just could never get right. Like I was always the one that was kind of sitting on the sidelines watching my friends, get into these relationships and it all going smoothly and this, that, and the other. And I was always kind of the odd one out, dating all kinds of questionable people and this, that, and the other. I've just jumped from relationship to relationship and noticed really that they all followed the same slippery slope. But it was almost as though I knew what was going to happen because it had happened so many times before. It's like I was going down a water slide and there's just nothing to grab onto. Like I knew what was going to happen, you know what I mean? But I just couldn't stop myself. And it just felt like it was absolutely out of my control. That was like a repeated pattern over and over again for years, like at least over 15 years. And then my last relationship completely broke me. Like it absolutely shattered me into pieces. And I think it's quite a common story, actually. Women have this like breaking point where they're like, I cannot take this anymore. That was me a few years ago. And I was kind of thrown onto, I suppose you could say, my healing journey. Something was telling me that if I didn't heal, like if I didn't take any time and if I just got into another relationship, it would be the same but worse, because every relationship was getting worse and worse. The bar for what I accepted and tolerated was getting lower and lower. And with that, I just knew intuitively almost that I just had to take that time and just heal. So that's kind of how I got to this point in my life, I suppose you could say, and helping other women do the same thing, really.
Yeah, and it's such a common thing, like you said, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that every single woman that I've spoken to forever in my whole life, so all of these years,
Yeah.
every single woman has one example of what a toxic relationship looked like. So whether that was a romantic connection or like a parent, and for me, I believe that there's a tie between the parent to the relationship. I don't know, I'm guessing you found that too. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting that that is the thing. And we don't realize that we're subconsciously living our life following the patterns that were shown to us or that we observed or, whatever growing up, that we then manifest that for ourselves. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting because that's been like my sister and I
Mhm.
both took very different approaches to dating and love. Like because my dad was an alcoholic, and with that comes abusive behavior. My
Yeah.
sister ended up meeting someone that was like my dad, whereas I went completely the opposite way and I went abstinent. So I just didn't date anyone, closed myself off. I was like, no. So I've spent a lot of my life single. And I feel like the relationships I have got into, I haven't found someone that's probably matched me emotionally and in that
Right.
emotionally intelligently. And I think that's been something that I struggled with myself. But what I've been learning recently is like the softening, and I think that
Yeah.
that's something I've dedicated myself to when I did my healing journey in the pandemic, right? Is coming in
Yeah.
a space of really, what does love feel like to me? Am I giving it to myself first? And then that knowing
Yeah.
that that would be the thing that attracts the person that is supposed to find me. And I feel like that is, yeah, it feels like a beautiful full circle. And my sister's gone through that circle herself in a very turbulent way, but she's finally
Mhm.
back in love with herself now. And I think that's, yeah, a beautiful thing. And obviously I'm grateful that I get to be here doing this work to support her through her transition as well, which we know is so important. But I guess obviously at this point is probably a good point to ask you, in your journey and like everything you're doing, and obviously you finding this for yourself, um, when do you feel like was your moment that you realized, okay, I need to make a career out of this, or
Yeah.
what was that point?
So a number of years ago, I had a coach. I worked with a coach to get through a few emotional things, and we didn't actually touch on relationships with that because I, at that point, I didn't really realize that anything was wrong with that. If that makes sense, like as you said earlier, like the chaos was normal to me. Like it all just felt so normal because that's what I was used to. So we didn't really touch on that. There was a lot of other things going on that we touched on, but I loved it. So she was somebody who I worked with for a number of months, still really, really highly respected, really have so much love for her. She totally transformed my life at that time. And I knew at that time that I would someday do something similar in my own way. But I didn't have any idea how that would look. Like I just had no idea. I was like, okay, I want to coach and I want to help people. Very similar to what she does with my own spin, but what does that look like? I don't know. So I just kind of bounced through life, you could say, trying to forcing things to work and nothing ever really working out in terms of career and stuff. And then I felt like I needed the life experience to kind of go with it, hand in hand with it, so I could have that niche, I suppose you could say, and have that focus. And then when my last relationship ended and I kind of had that breaking point, kind of this is it now, make or break, that was when I knew this is it. This is it. This is what you've been looking for. And I think alongside that as well, like all of that time, I was looking for my purpose and I never had it. And that's why I say I was bouncing around because I had no purpose. I didn't know why I was on this planet. Like I just didn't know why. And I was just constantly being dragged into things, chaos and different situations, and got really good stories to tell in bars. But for a life, that's not what you want, not when you're getting into like your late 20s, 30s and all of that. It's not what you want. So yeah, I suppose that was it. And I decided at that time, after that relationship ended, it just became so clear to me because I took myself on that healing journey and essentially healed myself through it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. I cannot be the only one. And as you said, every woman pretty much has had some kind of story. So I was like, yeah, this is my calling in life, and that's essentially my purpose.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you hit on something so important there. And I think that life experience for me is the most important thing. And I've been talking about it so much more recently as well,
Mm,
because I think it's so easy for us to like Google something, get the online qualification and be like, I'm the expert in this now. But actually, real life experience is something so rich and so deep that you can't copy and paste that anywhere else, can you? So like you said, you know, knowing that that's something you wanted to do, but you knew that there needed to be something else that backed that. And now being in that situation, it's like you're putting your money where your mouth is almost, aren't you? But on a deeper level, because it's like, hey, you know, I understand this work because I've lived through it. And I feel like, you know, that's very much been my journey too. When I first started out doing this work, I remember a few people said to me, oh, what qualifications do you have, like in coaching? And then when I tell people my life story, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I get it. And obviously, you know, for me, I've been teaching people my whole life, you know, whether it be dance or mentoring, you know, so I absolutely get that. And I guess then that leads to the next question, really, of in your life now, when do you feel like was that real moment that you gave yourself the permission to shine and be everything that you are?
I think it was when I took that step back and I realized that the key to healing was looking within rather than looking for something external to blame. Because I was always kind of stuck in this pattern of like, well, I'm just bad at relationships, or oh, I must just be, you know, XYZ, you know, or always something external. And I never really looked within. And it was so empowering when I realized that actually, and I mean, it was a hard pill to swallow, don't get me wrong. Holding that mirror up, right? You know, and jumping into relationships was that way of avoiding that mirror, you know. But holding that mirror up and being like, okay, actually, this all starts within. That's really hard and really messy and really dark. But it's also on the other side really empowering because I'm the one that can control this. Like I'm the one that can heal, you know, and that comes from me alone, you know. So I think that was when I really started to shine. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And I always say, like, for me, self-awareness is the key to self-mastery. And I just think when you can, like you said, hold that mirror up, and it's uncomfortable as hell, but you're like, okay, am I the problem? You know, and I constantly ask myself that. And I say constantly is probably the wrong word. It's not a very frequent thing, but it's enough for me to once a week or in a situation where perhaps there's an altercation with someone or something, I ask myself, was I the problem in that situation? Because I want to be accountable, because I don't want to be, you know, there's a thing, isn't there, about when you bleed your wounds onto everyone. I don't want to be that version of myself. I think that's Don Miguel Ruiz, isn't it? Mastery of Love, that book. He talks about everyone's walking around with wounds and like hitting each other and all the things. So I want to make sure that I'm always, you know, tending to my wounds. And I think that we can be both a work in progress and a master of like a masterpiece in one go. And I think that that's sometimes a lovely thing to think about as well, you know, that we're always growing and evolving, but equally we are whole in everything we're moving through. So yeah, I love that. I'd love to know a little bit more then about how you take your clients through this journey, especially with toxic relationships, and like what does that look like for you in your work?
It's such an honor to be able to do this work. Like I'm sure you feel that yourself with the clients that you work with. Like it is such an honor to see that transformation. You know, when they first come to me and they're like in that situation I was in a few years ago, like totally broken and don't know where to look and don't know where to go. And then, you know, at the end of it, like they're just a glowing, totally different person. So yeah, it's a really, really fascinating transformation that I take them on. And it doesn't even really take that much time. You know, people think, oh, I've got to be in therapy for years, or I've got to do this for years, and it's going to be really, you know, long and all of that. But I basically work with women. Usually women. I work with men sometimes if usually they get recommended to me, or you know, I'm recommended to them. But usually women. I work with them one-to-one for 3 or 6 months. It's basically a program that I take them through. So it's called Release, Reclaim, and Rise. Release is all about creating safety, breaking that pull. So the women that I work with, they're usually kind of one step in the relationship, one step out. They might be fully out of it, so the relationship might be over, but their heart's still there. They're still living it every single day, and it's like they can't shut that off. They're just hooked. Or they might still be in the relationship and kind of like, I know it's not right for me, but I keep getting pulled back. So that's breaking the pull. So the first section is usually about kind of processing the ending, processing that grief. A lot of the women I work with, and I was the same, that grief is so hard to work through. It is so hard and it's so heavy. And if you're trying to do it alone, it's like, well, where the hell do I start? So oftentimes because of that, we end up going back. So that is like the most important first step. Then the next part is reclaim. So we're reclaiming essentially what was lost during the relationship. That's like that journey of coming back to yourself. It's like rebuilding your confidence, your self-worth, your even like your goals and stuff that you want from life, you know, your voice. That's the number one thing that gets eroded and chipped away in these types of relationships, you know. So we're starting to use our voice again and starting to feel safe using our voice again. And then the last section of the program is the rise part, which is where we're stepping into who you're becoming. And at this point, they're hungry for it, you know, they're looking forward to life, you know, getting their life back on track. When in the first, and that's why we do it in that order. So in the first instance, when I ask them, what do you want from life? They're like, well, I don't know, you know, I just don't want to feel this way anymore. When I ask them that a few weeks or months later, they're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to go here and there and everywhere. So that's like the full transformation. That's when we're like creating this action plan for their future, basically, but it's like their future that they really want, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, my process is quite similar to you know, in the stages how it steps through. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, I know that. But when you said about that pull and they're one foot in, one foot out, I was like, I know so many women that are in that situation or have been in that situation. And I'm like, right, now I know the person to send them to, because it is so that, isn't it? That codependency / like narcissistic loop or whatever it is. And sometimes it's not narcissism, sometimes it's just a bond that keeps you going back to someone. I don't want to make it like we're blaming all of that, but there is such a tie, isn't it? And like you said, that release point of and especially women, because obviously my clients have all been women, is that women feel like without the relationship they're nothing, or you know, they don't know who they are. And with my clients, so they come to me, maybe they've had a traumatic relationship and they're on the rebuild of their life, you know, more so than relationship. But you know, in my work, kind of it ties in a way, but I'm not helping them get, you know, a relationship. I mean, it might happen, but you know, but that, like, they don't even understand what they want and who they are, and they've never thought about what they want for themselves, because they've always put someone else before them. And it's such a big thing in our lives. And this is why for me as women, like, I challenge people when they say to me, oh, I don't mind, I don't mind if I have that. I don't mind. And I'm like, no, you need to know what you want. For me, if someone says to me, what do you want? I say, what are the options? So then I can make a more clear decision, because I am a very laid back person. Like if you said to me, where do you want to go on holiday, Sherisse, this year? And you give, and I could be anywhere in the world, I will be there all day. Like, well, I want to go here, but I also want to go here. Whereas if you said to me, you've got the choice of Spain, Malta, or I don't know, Iceland, I'm going to go one of the hot ones. You know what I mean? So it's like, give me more like specificity, and then I can make a choice. And I feel like that's something that I challenge my clients with as well. I'm like, well, what are the options for you in that situation? Because then we can start to build that muscle, isn't it? Right? Like that little part of us. And I think so many women, you know, like you said, that they're in that form, aren't they? They're just completely like numb. They can't feel their body. The idea as well of, like, you know, for me, I use movement a lot in my work because obviously I was a dancer for so long, that when I get them to move and just like, you know, feel free, and like some of the somatic movements, I feel them still holding back. And I'm like, well, there is a wild woman within every cell of your being that wants to be released. She's free. That's when everything comes alive, right? And I guess that might be something, I guess, you teach in terms of, like, you know, like if women are looking for a relationship going forward and stuff, that it's that vibrancy, isn't it, that brings the next or the right person in. I don't know what you would say on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, you've really hit it there, because that's one thing that they fear so much. It's like, yeah, but I don't want the same thing to happen again. You know what I mean? And they're so fearful of that. And I remember being exactly the same, because, you know, after everything that had happened to me, I'm like, this can't happen again. I can't waste another, you know, X amount of months or years, you know. So I get that fear, I get it. But that's a huge part of the work that we do as well, you know. If that's what they want, if they are wanting to get back in the game, you know, and start to date again and that kind of thing, it's not as though that's never going to happen again and that's out of bounds now, you know. It's so possible, but you need to step into that version of who you are and be so comfortable and secure in who you are that, like you say, you know, you're sure about what you want and so sure about what you don't want as well. You know, we get them to a point where they can recognize the red flags early, you know, and they can feel them in their body without having to run off to the group chat and be like, hey girls, you know, is this a red flag? You know, it's having that knowing within yourself. Also holding that high standard for what you will and won't allow in your life, and everything else will just fall away. You know, it's incredible. That's after the work that I did. Everything else, all of those people, they fell away. You know, because I was glowing so much. So I was, you know, my light was so bright that they just fell away because they just couldn't touch me anymore, you know. So then you're able to go out and attract what you really want and really deserve, you know.
100%. And so much what you said then I've experienced myself. Like I know that for me as well. And you know, hitting the nail on the head again. And when you said about knowing what you don't want, I always say start there, right? When you know what you don't want, it makes it easier. But again, there's this black coffee theory in the universe. When we talk about manifestation, it's like if someone asks you what you want and you say I don't want a black coffee, you're more likely to get black coffee because you keep talking about it. So it's about being careful, you know, like at the beginning stages when you're trying to figure out what you do and don't like, you can say you don't like something, but then as you start to shift, so for you I would say like in your process of release, reclaim and rise, that in the reclaim part would be when you start to say, right, I do want this, and I
absolutely
this. And I feel like for me, I notice that for myself in my life as well, you know, like when there's moments, because again we ebb and flow, don't we, through healing. And I think when there's been moments where I've gone back into a bit of a dark night of the soul, I've noticed myself saying certain things and I'm like, oh, I can start to see that in my external. And I'm like, okay, well, now I want to call this in, universe. Are you listening? And it's like that kind of
absolutely
of all of those things, which is it's powerful, isn't it? I think when we realize how powerful we are, that makes such a difference. And like you said, I really truly believe that everything comes from our internals. So like how we feel about ourselves is always going to bring that out into the world, you know, and the right people and circumstances will come that way. I've found so many deeper connections in my friendships as well as a byproduct of really looking at, you know, where was my wounds and where was I projecting my own stuff onto people, you know, like and I think it's such an important thing because I believe that, and this is a bit of a sticky one for a lot of people, but you know, we attract something that is familiar or something that maybe we also hold within ourselves. And I think that that's a tough pill to swallow, but it is
for sure.
Accountability, isn't it, is that part. But I'd love to know, you know, maybe like if someone's listening and they're at the beginning stage process, so say for example they're in that part where they're one foot in, one foot out, what would be like 3 kind of tips or things that you would say to look for them if they're in that situation right now?
Well, I think the first thing is probably, like you've just said, you know, go through what you don't want. If you don't know where to start, just start there. Go through what you don't want. And it might be like, I don't want to feel bad. I don't know, whatever it is, just start there. Because like I say, a lot of the women who are starting out on this journey, they have no idea what they want, you know, they really don't. And it doesn't have to all be done at once, you know, you really don't have to do everything at once, kind of thing. The second thing I would say is to remind them that there's nothing broken within you. I think a lot of women that I speak to, they think that there's something wrong with them. Like they're almost looking for that as kind of an excuse almost, or like maybe not an excuse, but a way to validate it. Like, oh yeah, this happened because I'm XYZ, you know, but there's nothing wrong with you at all. This is all part of conditioning. It's all part of circumstance. It's all part of what perhaps you were used to growing up and all of that. And you're not alone in that, because it feels so like, it just feels like you're so alone and like you're the only person it's ever happened to. And then the third thing I would tell them, I did have something, it's gone out of my head. The third thing I would tell them, I'll come back to it because it's just gone out of my head.
No, absolutely. I think when you want to train a thought and then you kind of go back, don't you? I do it all the time. But yeah, it is such a I think that as women as well, we're very critical, aren't we, of ourselves? And we can be really, like you said, look at ourselves and be like, I'm the problem. I always attract these people. And don't get me wrong, there is a part of that is a, like you said, a pattern that we've
Mhm.
subconsciously, inherited. And you are not the problem, but you are the solution. That's something I always
Sure,
say. So it's like,
for sure.
okay, well, what can I do now to change that pattern and interrupt it? Because it's not saying, okay, I've always gone for men, let me go for women now. It's not saying that at all. I mean,
No. Yeah.
fair play, like go ahead.
If
But
you want, yeah, of course.
is that if you notice, especially like, if we take it to the somatics as well for both of us, because obviously
Mm.
we do this, that feeling in your body that someone gives you, and I talk about this a lot, is that instant spark that you get from someone that everyone's searching for
Yeah.
can burn out just as quickly as it ignites. Whereas if you
Yeah.
look for, I mean, don't get me wrong, there needs to be a connection and like something that
Mhm.
pulls towards someone, but there also needs to be regulation. So if there
Yeah.
is like just a like, what is this? I'm intrigued by this person. They're not my normal type, but I'm gonna see what this looks like. That's gonna build slower and probably steadier as well. And if that's something that you're looking for in your life, like consistency and stability, then go for that intrigue versus the spark and lust. Because I mean, I've seen it happen and it's worked when lust has led people and they've ended up
Yeah.
together and it's lovely. But I've also seen it a lot of
Mhm.
times where it doesn't go anywhere because, again, like we're conditioned societally that well, it's chemical, right? For men, their testosterone drops as soon as they've
Yeah.
slept with someone. Whereas for women, it increases. Then we create this like sort of codependent loop because of that. So at least if you are, I'm not telling you what to do, ladies, so don't no one come for me, but I'm just saying that if you are building steady and you build a foundation based on intrigue and interest and curiosity versus like lust and all of those things in between, that you are going to create probably more longevity than just like a flying thing that happens every now and again. I mean, you've obviously got more information on that, but that's my own interpretation of that.
I think that's right. I think it's also, I mean, that's what, when they say embody what you want to,
Mm-hmm.
experience and all that stuff, I think that goes very much hand in hand with that, doesn't it? Like if you can't want and crave, that kind of stable, slow burn, that really stable connection, but yet force intensity and rush things through, and skip those stages of like getting to know each other and all of stuff and just jumping straight in. Like, and I think that's one of the biggest things as well, mistaking that intensity for a genuine connection. And that's what another thing I help women with as well, because it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell the difference.
And especially because we're in this age of instant gratification, aren't we? Like we're so
Mm.
like, especially like the dating apps and even
Yeah.
social media, right? Like you get an instant message. And like for me, I feel like holding back on communication and not to play a game, but just for my own regulation feels
Yeah.
like what I need to do for myself. And I don't know if you're into human design, but my
Mhm.
is an emotional response. So
Okay.
I could be right up there in terms of like excitement and energy and like, yes, let me go for it. And then
Mhm.
if I sat on it a bit longer, I might be like, did I actually feel like I needed to do that? So it's like I need to wait just a little bit longer. And sometimes I'm impulsive and I like to keep it, just up and down, moving with the tide.
Mhm.
But yeah, I know for myself that creating that just steadiness is what feels good in my body. And I think that's
Yeah,
part
absolutely.
there, isn't it? What it feels like in
Absolutely.
your body. And I guess it ties into us as women listening to our gut, because don't we know when someone isn't right for us and we bypass it, and then your
Yep.
friends might say, oh, I don't know about that person. And I actually find as well that I am that person as a friend that will always say, I don't know, but I have to be proven right in the situation. Not
Sure.
right, I don't want to be right, as in like they have to prove that they are worthy of my friend, you know what I mean? Like I need that reassurance. But I think that's because obviously I love them so much that I want someone that's going to meet them. So it's very rare that I'm like straight away like, oh my God, I love that person for you. It's like
Yeah.
well, what did they do then? And how did that pan out? So I think that that's just being a good friend, but I don't project
Mhm.
that onto my friend. I'm just listening. I'm like curious. And then if they say to me, what do you think? I'm like, Do you want the honest answer, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear?
Giving them the option again, right? Giving them that option. They can choose.
Exactly. Yeah. No, 100%.
I remembered what I was going to say before. My third
Yeah.
tip is you don't have to wait for an apology to move on. And I think that's such a huge one, because so many women I work with, and also myself as well, it was like, okay, once I get that apology, and it's not even an apology necessarily, it's once I get once he admits that he was wrong, once he says he's going to therapy, once this, that, and the other, once he, whatever it is, you know, they don't necessarily have to be waiting for the apology, but some kind of accountability on his part, then they can move on. And it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you can move on without that, and it's totally possible. And when I first have initial conversations with the women that I work with, they're like, how am I ever going to move on without any of that? But it's possible because I did it. So, but I think it's also, at least going back to that time when I was in that situation, like I almost wanted an admission of guilt from him. Like I wanted him to say, yeah, I was out of order and I wasn't, you know, I didn't act well and I did this and I did that. And that would have given me relief. You know, it would have made me, because I think when you're in such a toxic dynamic, whether it's a narcissist or not, you know, I think that word gets thrown about a little bit nowadays anyway, but whether they're that or not on that spectrum, you know, we often take a lot of things on as women, and we're like, okay, maybe it was my fault, maybe we've been gaslighted, all of that kind of stuff. We're replaying conversations and we're like, okay, yeah, maybe I did go a bit too far then, and maybe this, that, and the other. You know, we often pin a lot of the blame on ourselves. And I think and I know I did that as well. And I think what I really wanted for relief was that admission of guilt from him. Just, yeah, I did do this, you know, rather than just lying and saying that you didn't, you know. And that prolongs it, though. That keeps you attached to that person. That keeps that connection there, you know, because you've always got this hope, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because that was me. I was that person. And I my last relationship that I had that ended probably 2 years ago now, is that they dump me via text basically, and I was seeing them for like 5 months. And you know, this man was in his late 30s. He was not a child. Do you know what I mean? And I was at that point, I realized in myself that, I mean, I guess that kind of was a closure, but it wasn't, because it was a message that was very cryptic and like very disconjointed. And I was like, an old version of me would wanted to have kept talking to him to understand really why. But when someone disrespects me on that level, I just cut everything off. Everything was gone. But I feel like naturally, for me, I listen and feel into when it's time to go. And I could sense it in myself. And I feel like almost that he might have felt that as well and wanted to get there ahead of the curve. But in the past, whenever I've dated people, which, you know, it hasn't been very often in my life, as I said, I've been very closed off to that type of interaction. I've been trying to be more, make more an effort of that over the last few years. But I did notice the people that I was really connected to, I did hold out for them. Like, you know, whatever it was, maybe the conversation faded and it wasn't quite a close but I was waiting for like, oh, maybe they'll come back around again, or maybe that'll happen, and they don't. And I think that, like you said, that's kind of the biggest disrespect you can give yourself, to not move forward, because I think that sometimes no answer is your answer. And I've had to sort of swallow a hard pill with that a lot of the times in my life, even with friendships and stuff and jobs. When you're you know, being a performer and stuff, like that was always some projection, was something I was quite used to. But I think I learned that that last 2 years as well, especially, I mean, I guess it kind of was closure, but in a way, I just felt like from that point on, anyone I date past that point, there's going to be no reminiscent for me. I'm going to energy cut and just move forward with that space. And if anyone wants to know about cord cutting, obviously you can drop me a message. But I think that's such a valid and important point there for sure. Okay, so if someone is listening thinking, right, I need this in my life, Jeni, how can I find you, connect with you, work with you? What are the details?
First of all, I'll say that I'm also launching a group program. It's been launched. Well, I've already launched it, but it starts on the 29th of June, and it's a group version of my signature program. So the Release, Reclaim and Rise. So yeah, there's a early bird special price until May the 10th. So if you get in before then, you'll get a special price. But that includes it's 3 months. It includes 6 group coaching sessions, 3 private sessions with me as well. So you're getting that full kind of group plus private support. It's also got a WhatsApp group for community support. So you're being led by somebody who's been there, but you're also being supported by women who are in it as well. And there's integration exercises on non-call weeks. So it's, there's a lot in there for those 3 months. So yeah, if that sounds interesting, then you can find me on Instagram. So it's at coaching and then a W and then Jeni, Jeni. So coaching W Jeni. And then my website's www.coachingwjeni.com.
Amazing. Well, I'll put the links in the description, so whoever's
looking,
yes, I need that in my life.
Perfect.
But it sounds like an incredible opportunity. And like I said, I know so many women, probably every woman, like I said, that I know has had some example of this in her life. And if you're listening right now thinking, yeah, I've repeated this pattern a lot, and this year was going to be the year that you made a difference, then maybe something like this is really what you need. So yeah, definitely reach out to Jeni. Thank you so much for all of your value and just kind of holding up a mirror as well, because it's made me think about myself as well and think, I remember when I used to do that. And it's nice to see how far you've grown. Like I'm like, actually I'm proud of myself for that. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
To finish the episode, I always do the soul to soul method. So based on the conversation or what you feel like someone might hear right now, or maybe what you needed to hear when you were going through it, what would you like to share with the audience?
I think to round off, probably you don't have to look outward for proof of your worth. That was a huge one for me. I used to outsource my worth all the time. I was surrounded by a lot of people who were perhaps not so healthy, let's just put it that way. And I believed everything they said about me and my abilities, and that chipped away at me. It really did. And I was so accommodating to what they wanted me to be, and hopefully finally they would accept me, but of course never did. And, not everybody has a genuine intention, and I think, I doubted and second guessed every part of myself. But when I realized on my healing journey that actually proof of my worth isn't in what those people say or think about me, it's actually all from within, and you can build on that, like you said earlier. You can always.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that was such a big part of my story as well, just in my life as a whole, just constantly trying to prove myself. And when I stopped doing that, everything in my life shifted, because I was no longer living for validation. I was living for fulfillment. And I think that just makes, the full circle there. Thank you so much, Jeni, for joining me, sharing all your wisdom and your value. As I said, the links will be on the show notes. If anyone listening wants to find Jeni, you know where to find her. But thank you so much, Jeni.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please do like, follow and share with a woman that you know needs to hear these words today. The more women that get to listen, the more impact and change and transformation I get to make into this world, and the light in you shines on others. So sharing that forward is absolutely the mission of this. This is how we all give and get and receive the permission to fully shine. I also have some really incredible things happening this year. I'm hosting the second She Rises event in April. So if you want to find out more about that, click the link in the description. And I'm now newly launching my first ever group program that is called Unforgettable. And it's taking you from performing visibility to embodied authority. So whether that's hosting your own podcast, or being on stage, or being the leader of your field, and you're ready to fully embody this version of you that has this dream and ambition, that the limiting beliefs, the childhood experiences, the generational trauma that has stopped you and prevented you from fully stepping into who you came here to be. This is the space where we get to write a new story, a new chapter in your life. And I'm so excited to hold that space for you. And as always, if you're looking for one-to-one guidance and support, drop me a message, because there's always spaces available for you. I'm sending you so much love.